You are listening to the So Now What podcast with Lana Manikowski, episode number 47. So now what? These three words raced through my mind time and time again during my journey through fertility treatments. I tried desperately to have a child, but never was able. I yearned for a community to join that could understand my struggles. I couldn't find one, so I created one with the So Now What podcast. I love that you found us. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of the So Now What podcast. I just feel so great today. I'm sitting here in my new studio with Miss Coco sitting on my lap, and I'm just feeling grateful that I had an opportunity to really create this life for myself and that I took a chance on me and decided that living my life at 80% and feeling like I'll always have that missing puzzle piece just wasn't enough for me, and that I knew I wanted to truly be excited about my life again, and I wanted to love my life and feel the ambition and the focus and the drive that I felt before I started my infertility treatments. So all that to say, I have been thinking about creating my So Now What sisterhood. So you all have listened to the podcast. You know my mission behind why I created the podcast, because I think there's such a lack of example of women who are out there and truly thriving and living a life that they love, even though they couldn't become moms. So with the So Now What podcast, I've created such amazing connections, and I'm consistently amazed by the amount of people who listen to the podcast and the amount of people who've reached out and just said hello and introduced themselves to me and told me that me sharing my story has allowed them to find hope and excitement for their future again. Which brings me to an exciting announcement that I have decided that it is time for us to launch the So Now What Sisterhood. And this is something that has been with me and something in the back of my mind since my early days of starting the podcast. And I'm so excited to share with you this week that starting in September, we are going to have a 3-month collective of women. It will be our first group of women that is going to join together in the sisterhood, and we are going to keep it small. I'm thinking probably just about 10 people, and we are going to do some work together for 3 months straight. And the reason I decided on starting this in September is I'm already seeing it now, but we are going to be full press into back to school photos and first day of 4th grade, first day of college, whatever it is, depending on your age and where your friends are in their child cycles, that we are going to have a lot of anxiousness and a lot of comparison about why our lives will never have that, and feeling sadness that we'll never have that first day back to school picture or the college drop off. Then also come October, we are going to have Halloween and the cutest kids dressed up as, pumpkins and trick-or-treating and cute family photos. So we're going to navigate that together in our collective and then get through the holiday blues. And we'll be wrapping it up right in time for the holidays. So we are going to spend 3 months together and form some amazing friendships. We're going to be together every week, and I know that this is what everyone has been waiting for me to bring, because I've been getting a lot of feedback from all of you for it. And it's here. So I actually already have a wait list. I would love for you to join. I do have a commitment to keep it small. So if it's something you're interested in, please send me a message now. It's going to be very affordable. I have a huge interest in keeping everyone at a point where they can grow together and learn together. And we can do this all in a way that we don't have to explain who we are, why we're feeling the way that we feel about being childless, about how sad our journey has been, and we're just going to grow together. So I'm excited to announce that to you this week. So please remember, if this is something that you want to be part of, I would so love for you to join me in the So Now What Sisterhood. And then being part of this first group of people, you will get lifetime membership to my future work and the events that we do, it's really going to be worth your benefit if you're one of the early founders of the sisterhood. And then you'll be one of the elders, as we call it, where you will be a guiding light to women who maybe are just new into this journey. And I just know that there's so much growth that we can do together. So I can't wait for you to join the sisterhood. It's going to be so much fun. And let me know if you're interested. Which brings us to this week's topic about friendships. And I know that a lot of us have gone through questioning whether there's relevance in our existing friendships with people, and especially when there's a lot of mom talk and kid talk in your social gatherings. And so many of my students that I've been working with on this wrestle with feelings of alienation, maybe lacking or detachment when they're thinking that they don't have anything in common, or that you can't relate to a friend or a group of friends that used to be your crew, like your people, your ride or dies. And I get it. And having feelings of alienation, detachment, or feelings of lack aren't ones that we often go out seeking. So when we notice that we are having them more and more while we're trying to navigate a childless future, it just does not sit well. So I'm going to offer you a few options, and you have the ability to decide whether any of these sound comfortable for you or sound good to you. So you have the option of just showing up and sitting there, and when you know that your friends aren't stopping the talk about how well Joey is doing in T-ball and how well Susie is doing with her potty training, you can just sit there and keep smiling and say, "That's so nice. That's awesome." And just be there and just nod your head and not feel like you're engaged. You can tell your friends that you're having a tough time, but you love them and you really want to see them, and that you're appreciative if there's just no conversation on this outing about kids. I mean, that's certainly an option for you to present to somebody. How about you just decide that you're going to pull back, and maybe when you get an invite, decide that you're just going to sit this one out and not have judgment for yourself if you are not at every girl's night out. So there's just some ideas that you can maybe chew on that have come from some coaching that I've done with my students. And maybe you're listening to some of these options and questioning if your difference in circumstances with you not having children and your friends having children has you thinking that things just won't be like they used to. And that is okay too. And think about how many things throughout your lifetime have changed. Careers, hairstyles, home decor, personal interest. I mean, the list goes on of things that you have outgrown in your life, or paths that have taken a turn in your life that has created a life that is in the form that it is now. And friendships really, in my opinion, are no different. And we can judge ourselves and expect ourselves to consistently show up to conversations and events that don't offer us personal growth. But what is that giving you as a person? And you can decide that it's okay to show up to something that doesn't feel good to you. And many of my students struggle with showing up for themselves first because there is a security and a familiarity with a group of humans that somehow seems important to the part of you in your story and the history that you have. And so if you're believing that you don't fit in with that group anymore, you're telling yourself that you have a lower worthiness, or that you're just not as much of a contributor in a friendship. And so maybe it's just time to decide, if it's the appropriate conversation to have, that you have outgrown a friendship. So let's talk about how you know when you've outgrown a friendship. And frankly, I think as women, we have this wonderful innate knowledge of things, and we just know. I mean, think about how many times in your life you know the answer to something, but you're just not ready to tackle it head on, and that's okay. And maybe you are excited about the time together with your friends because it will be enjoyable, or you're getting together because you're worried that you'll be judged if you don't show up. So decide, are you excited about the time you're going to have together because it will truly be enjoyable? Or are you getting together with your friends because you're worried that you'll be judged or talked about if you don't show up to the gathering? And oftentimes your friendships change because you are changing as a woman. You're not the same person anymore. And if you're more recently navigating your journey out of IVF treatments, there's so much that is different and things just may be really tender and really raw right now. And that's totally okay. And that is so to be expected. And maybe you just need to hit pause on the things right now and the friendships right now as you're settling into this chapter in your life. And I know I had to do that with my friends. I was disconnected for a while after my treatments ended in 2018. I remember judging myself for not wanting to go and see their babies or not buying them baby gifts and taking them to the house because it was too painful for me. So on top of having this sadness that they were able to have kids and they were bringing babies home, I was judging myself and believing that I was a selfish and awful friend. So if you're doing the same, know that that is not a requirement. But if you find yourself doing it, it's okay. You can put your needs first. True friends will understand. And I know that because I love my girls. My girls, there's 4 of us. We have been in each other's lives for, upwards of probably 20 years. And we all have had our different journeys. I'm the only one of the group who is not a mother. My one girlfriend has 3 kids, one set of twins that became identical twins from IVF. My other girlfriend is a single mom. And my 4th one in my crew is a foster mom to 2 teenagers. Actually, one of them's now in their 20s. But if you think back to my journey and your journey and the things that we go through and that we're trying to navigate, I had to put myself first. And my friends had the option to decide that maybe, they didn't call me every time. And I had the option to decide, were they being jerks for not inviting me to every girls' night, or were they just giving me my time because I knew that that's what I needed for myself and they saw it for me? But if you're finding yourself outing after outing feeling like you have less and less in common with your old friends, that doesn't need to freak you out, that you're moving in a different direction. And maybe over time, the chemistry of your friendship and the connection and the bond that you had is just no longer there. So here's a few steps to take and some things to think about before you decide whether this is just something temporary or whether this is something that you've actually outgrown. And I also want to note that when you outgrow a friendship, it is not a problem. I just coached a student on this last week. It doesn't need to be dramatic. You don't need to have any dramatic plans to sit down and have a conversation and tell them that you've outgrown them and that you're no longer friends. It can just be a gentle changing of the relationship, because relationships can take change in their form and it doesn't necessarily have to end in an abrupt way. There's no need for finger pointing or a breakup over a Post-it. That's my reference to Sex and the City. I don't know if any of you remember that episode. It was one of my favorites. But you don't need to have a dramatic conversation unless you feel like there's need because you just don't have any values in alignment any longer. So when you enter the part of your journey, when your grief of childlessness presents less and less, you'll be able to make space for your growth and start to create a future that you absolutely love and feel excited about. And that's what I do with my students every single day. It's transformational work, and I'm so grateful that I was my first student and I have the opportunity to teach my students how to create a life that they truly love, even though they couldn't become moms. So when you start to focus on your growth and plot the future that you can't wait to explore, your values are going to change. And that is no longer a scary thing. It's exciting, especially after feeling like your life was on hold for so long as you were navigating your IVF treatment and navigating your fertility journey. So when you grow, the value that you carry around and the values that you start to grow with have changed, and your focus in your life changes. So when your life changes and your values change, there's certain things that we don't find of value anymore. And it's okay to ask yourself if there's certain questions that, you might need to probe yourself to understand what it is that you value in a person. And just because you don't find value in a person or a friendship anymore doesn't mean that you're making a statement that that person is no longer valuable. It just means that your circle of friendship may have come to a completion and that ring is closed, and that each of you have wonderful interests and wonderful experiences and journeys and intentions, but you're just growing in amazingly different ways, and just your lives are taking a different form. So if you're at a crossroads, here's a few questions that you can consider. Ask yourself, why am I friends with this person? So when you're doing your paper thinking this week, if you have someone in mind or a group in mind, ask yourself that. And then ask yourself, if I met this person today, would I choose to develop a friendship with them? And if the answer is no, it doesn't mean that you break up with them. You just let the relationship take its different form. And you can still be friendly, and you can still maybe see each other a couple times a year, or depending on your frequency, a couple times a month, and you can just carry love for that person. But the love just shows up in a different way. And maybe there are friendships where you've been sharing something that's unhealthy, and you partake in buffering activities and behaviors together that might be holding you back. And, for example, I know that there was a point in my life where there was people I surrounded myself with where I was very negative around. I talked shit about people. I bitched and complained with this group of people, and we loved it. We were a bunch of assholes together and not very kind and nice people. But as I started to change and I became happier with who I am and became more aware of how me acting that way and me believing things about myself that didn't feel good were driving me to take such actions, I decided that those weren't the type of people I wanted to surround myself with anymore. So maybe you have someone that you drink a lot with or smoke with, or is your pizza and cupcake loving buddy. And when you decide that you want to take those activities out that are no longer of interest to you, you need to ask yourself, what do you have in common with that person? And when you're taking those activities out, how is your time together nourishing? And if you come up blank, maybe it's time to take a clean break from that relationship. And that can be important. And maybe you're just hitting the pause button on that friendship, or maybe it's forever. So when I went through that, and, for example, for me, that I went through a weight loss journey after I finished my IVF treatments and I had a bunch of weight gain, I decided that I didn't want to drink as much. And I didn't want to social drink and just have like a random glass of wine every night for dinner. So I cut that out. And there were certain friends that I'd go out with, and our friendships were based on ordering bottles of wine, eating and drinking. And you have the opportunity to say, hey, I'd really love to hang out with you, but instead of us going out for dinner, what do you think about going to a workout class? What do you think about going on a walk instead? And so you maybe just are going to be the catalyst for them to take a new form of their habits too. So if they're not interested, remember that that's okay, that you're choosing to do other things with your time, and you have goals that you want to meet because you're ready to take your future back and create a life you truly love. So use your own judgment, trust yourself, be honest with yourself, and be honest with that other person when it's necessary and when you think it's going to be helpful. And I don't think it's always necessary to tell someone, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. In many cases, you can just let the relationship kind of take change in its form, and that's just fine. So if you're listening to this and thinking that it's a really hard thing to navigate, sign up for a free discovery call for me. If you go on my website or if you go in my bio on Instagram, You can sign up for a free discovery call. I'd love to talk with you more about this. I also have my guide to loving your life again. It's free for download on my Instagram bio and, of course, on my website. Download it, use it to help you, but know that it's okay if your life is changing form. And there's no one that can judge you and make you do something and be with people that don't make you feel the way that you want to feel. So you have the autonomy and the ability to do that at any point in your journey. So have a lovely week. Remember, it is never too late to discover your meaning. I can't wait to talk to you next week.